Adil,
Hi.
how you doing, man?
Good, my man. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being on my podcast, even though you had a self-tape to slip in today.
Happy to be here.
How did it go?
Well, as
Yeah.
they do.
As they do. Always last minute, right?
Always last minute.
When did you get it?
Nature of the business. Yesterday evening. As
Yeah.
they do.
Of course. Well, I'm happy to hear it. Well. Adil, let's start off with an origin story. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? And how did you get into this industry?
This one's going to be fun. How much time do you have? I was born in Switzerland, out in the German part, a little city called Uzwil. And very quickly we moved to the French side, a little city in between Geneva and Lausanne called Nyon.
Okay.
Grew up there up until I was about 10. And
Is that
then-
the French? What
That is the
language?
French side,
Okay.
yeah. So I grew up speaking French, moved myself out here with my parents and my family when we were about 10. We moved to Toronto, where I spent about 15 years. So I grew up between Switzerland and Toronto,
Okay.
which leads to a heck of a dynamic.
Was it a culture shock when you moved here?
Yeah, a little brown boy coming to America.
Are there a lot of brown
speaking,
people in Switzerland?
Tons.
Really?
Switzerland opened their borders pretty openly to refugees in like the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
Even the 60s, I think. And a lot of Turkish people, a lot of Lebanese people, a lot of just general refugees. Mom's family was from Tanzania.
Okay.
And so I believe in the 70s there was a big revolution there, which sent a lot of people away from Tanzania.
Yeah.
And the family itself ended up moving to Switzerland of all places, which I'm very happy for because I love it. To me now, that's my home.
Yeah. Do you still have family
And
there?
I do. My grandma lives there, remaining grandparent, and the entire side of my mom's family, aunt, uncles,
Cool.
all that live on that side. So nonetheless, still very much my home. All things considered, but when we were about 10, when I was about 10 years old, 98, we moved ourselves out to Toronto.
Yeah.
Just to have a little more culture and just general family dynamics, out in America. Little did I know at the time that it would serve me. I had no ambitions of being an actor back then. No general idea. The only thing I had to go off of was that I used to watch a lot of Power Rangers.
Okay.
And when anyone used to be like, hey...
Who's your favorite Power Ranger?
Oh, Jesus. It's tough because Tommy the Green Ranger was the best character, but having met a few of them, Austin, the Red Ranger is absolute original Red Ranger. Absolute beauty of a human, absolute inspirational dude. Really, honestly, really good people, most of them in that community. But anytime anyone would be like, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would be like, well, it's obvious. I want to go to America. I want to be a Power Ranger. It's not a question. Soon that changed to, a paleontologist because I watched Jurassic Park and I was like, obviously I want to be a paleontologist. Like, what else would you want to be? And I slowly realized something is that the more I watched things, the more I wanted to, I guess, be that profession, which seems crazy because then you watch a lot of more war movies and you're like, I want to be a soldier, obviously. And ultimately, I did realize that's when we moved out to America when I was about 10, America, North America, Canada. It became a stifled dream. Grew up in Toronto, and at somewhere about 21, I realized this. 2021, I realized this was a thing I kind of wanted to do with my life.
What were you doing at that point? Were you in university?
Yeah.
Studying?
So I did the traditional, of course, Indian parents and everything. They're like, you got to go to university. And I'm like, of course I got to go to university. Made it out to university, economics, first year,
Cool.
McMaster. Wonderful school, wonderful campus. One of the best times of my life, honestly.
Yeah.
Which lasted a full year. It was good times.
You dropped out?
Oh, dropped out right away.
Really?
Dropped out right away. Let it be. Yeah.
So that was when you decided I'm going to be an actor and you just dropped out?
Well, here's what it was. It was a year in economics, and ironically, the two courses that caught my attention while I was there was psychology and communications. Those were I think, honestly, the only two classes I actually attended and went to full extents with. And again, at the time, you never really realize this. You never really know it. But everything that kind of interests you along the way is somehow pointing you in a certain direction. And I was there, and I was studying. I would attend psychology, of course, 101, and I would attend communications. And little did I know at the time, what I was learning about was how the brain works, and what fascinated me was how we speak to each other, why we speak to each other, the way we speak to each other. And so when I eventually decided that economics was not what I wanted to do, I stood there and I had two options in front of me. I had this ability to, I really like food. I'm going to put that out there right now. Food's one of my biggest loves of life. And I really mean food almost in an artistic way, like you know, down to the semantics of it. And I stood there, I remember, in my bedroom in Toronto, North York, good suburb, thinking to myself, I could really have two choices. I got Switzerland, best hospitality schools in the world there,
That's right.
amongst also having, you know, some of the best culinary education.
Are you a citizen? You're
a Swiss citizen? I am, yeah.
Oh, that gives you so many advantages of working anywhere in Europe,
of course,
right?
Anywhere, Europe for one, definitely in Switzerland, lots of free education. And so I had this, I had this thought. I had to like think it out. I had to go. I could either go back.
Yeah.
I could study I could study culinary and hospitality there, and it would be, you know, I would have tons of fun. Or I could stay put in Canada, in Toronto, and give this weird concept I had when I was younger a chance.
Yeah.
This idea of acting. Now you know, you may relate to this, but backtrack about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Ethnic TV wasn't where it is now. We've come a very, very long way.
Mm-hmm.
Try to be a little Indian kid going up to his dad, telling him, you know what, Dad, I think school's great, business is great, everything you kind of computer science at the time, which was really popular, programming is great, and you know, I know that's what you want me to do, but listen, I think I'm going to go do this crazy little thing called acting. That doesn't get perceived very well. Not in that aspect.
Now, at this point, had you actually tried acting at all, or this was just in your head a little bit? It was just in your head.
0. 20 years old, brand new. So yeah, definitely unconventional. Not going to give you one of those stories where I went to theater school, where I did a bunch of stuff. Right. Not at all. 2021, the only experience I had is this obsession I had with psychology, I guess, cognitive behavior. I had this obsession on body language and speech and why, how can we sit here talking into microphones about, I mean, in all seriousness, a microcosm of what humanity is, which is just my little story. Mm-hmm. And people listen to it. People get people absorb it. You know, you go out into the world and you take stories from everybody that you see, and people tell you about things. And they impact you. Why right. Is that a thing? You know, all that kind of stuff fascinated me, and I thought, you know what? I have a chance to artistically explore that in my life, and if I don't do it now, when I'm 20, 21, kind of world's your oyster kind of thing, tons of opportunities ahead of you, then when am I going to do it?
Right.
And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, and that's perfectly fine. And there's tons of things I can do that aren't, I guess, age dependent or dependent on the circumstances of where you are in life or physically as per your location.
Right.
Why don't I just try it? Mm-hmm. And so.
So what were your first steps?
Honestly, the same as any other person who has no idea at all about anything that he's doing ever. Google.
Right. Google acting classes or how to be an actor? What did you Google?
Right.
Do you remember?
I do. I went up to the Google and I hit. I just hit acting classes Toronto. I think I put agencies because I wasn't even aware that there was like an education process at the time. I was like, agencies. Someone say yes to me. I don't know, approval. And so I did. I found a couple classes around Toronto, and it was an interesting experience, kind of going into them and seeing what it was like. And now, by all means, one of the biggest lessons I learned at the time is audit and educate yourself on what acting actually is before you decide to take a class that's, well, for all intents and purposes, not acting.
Right.
It started very simple. I think at the time I'd signed on with a tiny little agency which was more geared towards modeling, I believe, and not at all in the niche of where I was going to go. Eventually it led to a different agent who took very good care of me, Jan Abrams in Toronto, who was an absolute beauty at the time, given I had absolutely nothing under my belt, and she was willing to jump in and, you know, take a risk on that, which is always a blessing. But it also goes to show that, like, honestly, if you look for things, you'll find them. I can't tell you how, and I can't tell you why things happen the way they happen, but if you look for something and you care long enough and you work at it hard enough and you persevere in it long enough, you'll find someone that believes in you, even if it's unwarranted at the time. So
you signed with an agency and you're out there, you're auditioning. Were you also training at that same time? And
yeah. I mean, it's I've always been one of those people that kind of looks at, I don't know what it is in me. I'm sure a therapist would know what it is in me, but there's always an innate voice in my head that kind of goes, "You're not good enough for what you're doing." Right? I believe that's a pretty universal voice in your head that remains. By the way, doesn't go away. Doesn't go away. So that little voice could initially start off being a hell, you know what I mean? It's something that at the very beginning deters you from a lot of things, until you realize it's your best friend, and you realize it's there to help you, and the voice that's telling you that you're not good enough means go out there and get good enough.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you know how to leverage that voice, right, and use it to motivate yourself to work harder, and I mean, you know, self-doubt is very normal. If you don't have any self-doubt, you're probably kind of delusional. Because you're not looking at yourself objectively, you're just looking at yourself how you want to perceive yourself.
Big time.
But if you just use that to motivate yourself, it's very useful, for sure.
Big time. I think a lot of those tools kind of come to you as you get older.
Sure.
As you understand life a little better.
Sure.
But the sooner you can kind of tell yourself.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, from my own experience as well, when I had started taking classes maybe a year or two before I even looked for agencies, and I'm very happy I did that, because at least I got a little bit experience and I was a little comfortable, but I was still very naive, right? And the same thing, any agent who would show interest, I would just jump at them, right? And I had some like maybe not some amazing agents right in the beginning. Anything that you wish you knew back then? Maybe someone who's listening who, you know, they're 19 years old and they're in first year university at McMaster psychology. It's interesting. Maybe I should try.
Definitely go to those psychology classes. That's a definite piece of advice to anyone in that situation. Honestly, looking back, of course, there's an entire book you could publish to your younger self as you get older, and I'm sure you can relate to that. But if we were to pick some of the highlights, take a page out of the Philadelphia 76ers book. Trust the process would be something that would be amazing to hear, but really hear, you know what I mean? It's like it's easy to toss that word around.
Sure.
But if you really start dissecting that, it's in between trusting the process is a caveat that includes be kind to yourself. You know, and I think that's something in this day and age, honestly, even 10 years later, that is very, very prevalent. If I had learned this lesson earlier, would be good. I think it's still something that I personally struggle with. I think it's something a lot of people struggle with. I think it's a crutch in humanity that we have this tendency to double up the stress in our lives by being even harder on ourselves. I think the second you can kind of realize and talk to yourself and tell yourself that a lot of what you're going through, you can actually make easier on yourself simply by not being so cruel to yourself in your head. And it seems simple, it really does, but I for one am very grateful with the way mental health has taken a turn. The conversation on mental health has taken a turn over the last little while. And I think the concept of being nice to yourself is something that it's a little more obvious now, and it's a little more prevalent now, and it's very good that it is. But honestly, if you were to backtrack me to you maybe 21, maybe 15, let's go 12 to 15, a very crucial time when I had just moved here from Switzerland. It was very hard to make friends. It was very hard to fit in. It was very hard to look around and say I belong here.
Yeah.
And that I'm here in a place that I don't know, but I can make an impact. I can go out there and do something worth people's time. A lot of that involves just being nice to yourself. A lot of that involves just being able to look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what, you're okay, you're fine. Work hard, do the things that are important to you, but don't add to your own stress. Don't add to your own depression. Don't add to your own troubles by making life hard on yourself. So
yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think everyone does. I still struggle with it too, but yeah, with age comes maturity and experience, right? I mean, life is hard enough on its own.
Absolutely.
And life is short. You really don't know.
Absolutely.
You don't know what happens when. So,
another wonderful lesson you learn as you grow older, right?
Yeah. More people around you die. It's just true.
Yeah, it is. And honestly,
I mean, not to sound morbid, but die or stuff happens. Stuff just happens. It's so unpredictable. And then you look back and you're like, what was I, wasting so much time stressing about?
Absolutely. And it's very, you say morbid. It's very easy to fall into that. Of course, death is never easy. And as you grow older, there is more of it that shows up in your life. But another little thing of as you're growing up, what to tell yourself if you could when you were a kid. Life is short, but that's not a restriction ever.
No.
It's not it's important to know that you don't have all the time in the world. It's a very important lesson. It's a lesson that I wish I learned sooner. When you're in your 20s, when you're in your teens, you think the world's ahead of you. And it is, in a way, absolutely. The world is ahead of you. But it's a very important lesson to learn that you actually don't have a lot of time. Take your time. Do a lot with it. Get to it. Be proactive.
Yep.
Take time to rest because that's important.
Right.
But don't lose sight of the goals, ever.
Yeah.
If we're to go back and tell my younger self something, don't lose sight of the goals.
Yeah.
Don't discourage yourself.
Right?
Stay focused. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And like Philly says, trust the process.
Yeah. And be kind to others. That's important too, right?
Big
because
time.
People treat, first of all, people treat you how you treat yourself, and then people treat you how you treat them. So those are two things, right?
The be kind to others is literally on the backdrop of my phone.
Oh, nice.
Work hard and be nice to yourself is almost a religion I live by.
Yeah.
But the be kind to others, again, if you really look into it, does start with you being nice to yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Most of the people you encounter in your lives that aren't nice to you, that you have empathy for, you have sympathy for, and you can look at and say, hey, I understand.
Yeah.
If you really look at them, it all comes from inside. It comes from something that they're not happy with themselves about.
Oh, for sure, 100%. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anyone else.
Big time.
Otherwise, you're just it's just a surface thing you're trying to project that I'm super nice and smiling all the time, but then under the surface, as we've
it doesn't last
seen,
long.
Yeah,
it doesn't last long. The walls cave in quick if you don't have an ability to look at yourself and say, you know what. This is me with all my flaws.
Yeah.
This is me and who I am. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And now let me go out and be nice to everybody around me and work hard and diligently at something I believe in.
Right. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. So you're in Toronto, you're auditioning. What were your first few years like?
Mean.
So you mentioned something about at that time there were not a ton of non-diverse actors, mostly white actors.
Big time. I mean, here's the thing with media, right? If you're looking at media, especially as a younger person growing up, everything you kind of learn about the world comes through media. Now, media's definitely evolved in the time that we were kids to now, in the sense that there's again podcasts. The fact that we're here talking and someone somewhere might actually listen to it. It's like it's crazy to know that we have so many different mediums now. When we were kids, it was mainly TV. There was radio. There was, but you'd watch TV, and the way media works is you understand about the world and its perceptions based on what you're watching. So, where you put your focus on as far as media goes has a lot to do with the way you view the world. there is a lot of representation on media, which lets someone look at TV and go, oh, hey, because I see myself there, that means I'm socially accepted. Because I see myself there, I belong in society.
Yeah, of course.
Because I see this job and this job and this job being portrayed, that means those jobs are important. Now, when you are, at that time of ethnic descent, whichever it may be, and you're looking at the TV shows you're watching, and you're vying and you're trying to find some sort of representation for yourself on there to go, I am okay. In the society that I live in this American society, in this Western world I live in, I am okay and I belong. But it's not there.
Right.
It's not there.
Or is there in a very stereotypical
or that, and you simply watch it and you go, that's not who I am. And so you instantly shut down because it's something with it doesn't connect with who you are as a person. So media has that very powerful effect on just about everybody, because that's why it's been so prominent since almost the dawn of whenever technology came around. You look at media and you go, hey, there's a representation of who I am, and then you find acceptance with it and you carry on knowing that you fit in and you have a spot. When there isn't any of that, when there isn't anything to look at and go, oh, I do belong, I am a part of it, I mean, discouraging is one word. You do look at it and you do go, do I fit in? Do I belong? Do I, let alone this industry, do I belong in this microcosm, this ecosystem that we've created? Do I fit in there? And the answer is no. The answer is I don't, and that's what that time in Toronto was all about. It was all about looking at that and going, okay, there isn't much, there isn't a lot. Sure, there are a few and they're floating around. There isn't a lot. But you have to somehow fight that concept, a concept that's been existent forever and ever, with the idea that you might break the mold, or someone might break the mold. Not to, to stay humble on that front. Someone might break the mold, which then lets me go, okay, this is okay. This is allowed. I'm allowed to do this. So that time in Toronto was a lot of that, was a lot of trying to find, and again, something I didn't know at the time at all, finding self-love, finding a way to look at yourself and go, okay, look, there isn't a lot of representation, or the representation that exists is very minimal or very niched. But you know what? You could be number 1 or 2 on the call sheet. You could play a character that would otherwise maybe be played by a white guy at the time. I'm super thankful. A lot of this is based on what life was like about 10 years ago. Very thankful with the way things have progressed. Still got ways to go.
Of course.
But what was I was doing a Hallmark Christmas movie just 2 days ago, and
did you have to shave?
No,
really?
Look at that, right?
They're letting you have a stubble now?
At that.
Really?
Look at
I thought
that.
that was a cardinal rule.
Progress
Nice.
is key.
I've actually still never auditioned for Hallmark.
I know. I mean, that's the world we lived in for a while, right? This was actually my first Hallmark in what 10 years of vying in this industry. So you find progress where progress is, and
if Hallmark is starting to let you be a brown guy with a beard, progress is coming. There's no doubt about that.
Very evident. Very evident.
That's great. So touching on that, so you moved out to Vancouver how many years ago?
I moved out 5 years ago, so I was 25.
Okay. What prompted your move?
Well, there I was. For me, it's weird because you look at Toronto and you think it's a very multicultural city, which it is. And now we're going to get a bit into the actual craft of acting per se. And so there I was in Toronto. At this point, educated for about 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years. Various coaches, just finding my way, trying to figure out what acting actually was, and what it meant to me, and what my message to the world was via my craft, which I think is a very important thing to figure out. At some point, I think it always changes, but I think it's a very important thing to know what you stand for and what you want to tell the world with your craft or with your art. And so there I was, 25, trying to solidify that and getting a better understanding of it as I go. And I had an acting teacher at the time who told me that maybe Vancouver might be fun for a little bit. And he was like, the industry's really good there. And I was thinking to myself, it's the West Coast. I don't know how many ethnic parts there'd be or how many ethnic people there'd be on that side. And he was like, I was in Toronto. It was as you know, lots of multiculturalism there in our industry. Here is what I learned, and it's fun. Not everyone's good.
Sure.
Not every actor is good. And when you oversaturate a field and you walk into casting rooms as an ethnic person, they look at you and they go, great, it's an ethnic person acting. And they're going to try to get by on their ethnic looks because that's, something that
they need to fill the quota.
Something that they definitely need to fill the quota. And more than anything, they need some color nowadays in something. So you get a lot of actors that are, for lack of a better way of putting it, uneducated, and
untrained. Let's just untrained.
Let's go with that. And you find yourself in a niche where everyone is looking at you and going, "Oh, great! There's another brown actor, and he's obviously not going to be good." Now,
you're talking about Vancouver here?
No, I'm talking about Toronto. I'm talking
really?
about Toronto.
I know a lot of very good ethnic actors.
Oh, of course, there's tons, and I can name you a list of ethnic actors who I admire, who I almost look up to, by all means. But I'm going to tell you this as a going into rooms, into and we're talking small stuff. We're not talking big stuff at this point. We're talking small stuff. At this point in my career, but you'd go in and it would be almost a cattle call, and it would be many actors that were ethnic, and it was basically every ethnic actor in Toronto would show up to these, and most of them would be not good.
Right.
And there's a little, I guess, anecdote that I picked up off one of my friends. Are we allowed to drop names here?
Sure.
Yeah. My good friend Sachin, who is on a show called 100 here. We once sat down and he told me something that I'll never let go of, but he reminded me of the concept that as an ethnic actor, knowing that most of this industry on the upper echelon is not ethnic, you got to be 3 times as good as you normally would be.
That's true.
If you're going to walk into a room.
It's true.
Do you have any idea how many cards are already stacked against you before you even make one move in that room? It's insane. So
that's just like any industry.
Of course,
right?
Absolutely.
It's like in banking, you go to it's changing a lot, but that's just like any industry, right?
Well, here's the thing: you walk into a room and already they're looking at you with a certain prejudice. Again, not so much anymore, but at the time, absolutely. Yeah. Now, a lot of this industry is changing for the better,
and it's changing every day, big literally, time. Right? Like the prejudice is going down, decreasing every day,
big time. But let's spin this into a positive. You go into the room and already a lot is stacked against you, whether or not they have their prejudices on what ethnic actors do, whether or not your parts are big enough to warrant you actually having some communication with the directors, which it's not most of the time at the beginning, because you're there as an actor, you're there as a day player, you're trying to get your 1 or 2 lines across. The director has no time for you, and you're there trying to be a legitimate actor. You're trying to respect the craft, and you're trying to respect the world you're in. A lot of the times you end up in a situation where a lot of the cards are already stacked against you, whether or not they even want to cast you. Sometimes you go in for open calls where, really they know they're looking for a white guy, but they have to put the open call there. Right. And so a lot of the cards are stacked against you. Spin this into a positive, which is something, I'm lucky to have the wonderful friends in my life that help me see the world this way, which is be 3 times as good.
Yeah.
Be 5 times as good. Be 10 times as good.
Right.
Study. Be so good that they can't look at you and ignore you. Of course, Steve Martin, look at you and say, "Oh, you know what? We'll pass him off as just a colored actor."
Right.
No, be the person that they look at to go, "Hey, there's legitimacy in this, and we buy it, and it's real."
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, it's literally, I see it changing every week. I go in and there's people of all ethnicity and also all sexes. There's men, women,
big time.
For all roles.
And so much more.
I mean, I think, it's true. Probably a lot of the producers, which I think is changing as well. I worked in The Expanse, and one of their main producers was an Indian person, right? So now you're seeing that there as well, which is really important, right? Because also the writers, the stories are told from a person's perspective, right? But it's not that anyone's a bad person. It's just someone, like you said, the media shapes who you are. It shapes how you see the world. So, you write a character from a certain perspective, and you just have this subconscious perspective.
Yep.
And then, like you said, someone else comes in and like, well, yeah, they're good, but I just doesn't quite fit in. It's just because it's their perspective.
Big time.
But that, you overcome that by just, like you said, being 5 times as good as everyone else, and slowly that perceptive chips away. Also with representation.
Big time. Yeah, none of this. Honestly, it's not like they're there intentionally.
No.
Oh, hey,
of course not.
let's screw let's screw this demographic of the population.
Yeah.
No, it's just the way the cards fell, and like I said, it's a good thing that we're rearranging those cards nowadays with a much open perspective, a much more open perspective. And I think, honestly, like I said, we're in a great spot. We're making great progress. Let alone this pilot season that just passed. The amount of pilots with leading ethnic characters and just diverse characters. Period. Let's not just constrained to ethnicity, sexes, cultures, any aspect of humanity, which is such a broad spectrum, is starting to get looked at. And there's stories, people are realizing there's stories to be told that people want to listen to about many, many, many different demographics of our population, which is a great place to be.
Right. And it's also, Silicon Valley's kind of slowly taking over Hollywood. Netflix, Amazon, these are tech companies.
Big time, that's what they are.
They're hiring studio bosses from the studios to run their studio divisions, but it's still Jeff Bezos' Amazon. I was watching Jack Ryan. Have you seen it?
Yep. The TV
it's
show.
Good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's hard to see Jim out there, but
I really bought him, man. I buy him as this underplayed hero, not to give anything away, but I thought he was perfect for it. And I typically don't go in for those franchises. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
And just how international it is, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing this consistently with the big players, Amazon, Netflix, because the markets are huge in Asia, in South America, and they're producing original content for those countries. Like, I know Netflix produces a bunch of India originals now, and they're doing it really well, and that's why you also see actors from all around the world, which is fantastic. I think that's how it should be.
It's
right?
amazing.
And these stories are fantastic. It's so well done. So 100%.
A lot of the the beauty with technology is it makes the world a smaller place.
Yeah.
It lets you have access to. You can listen to a podcast from some dude in India, or China, or anywhere really around the world, sitting at his table doing the thing, and you can listen to it easily.
Yeah.
The world is becoming a smaller place, which allows us to have access to so many other people's stories, which ultimately influence our stories and our perspectives. And everything expands.
Right. I mean, the internet democratizes. Right.
Big time.
The flip side to that, there's a lot of content out there, and it's maybe harder to stand out. But I think, like you said,
democratizes as well as capitalizes, depending on which.
Sure, but what I do believe is, sure, there will always be the power players who will jump in and start to capitalize on what's happening. But still, even compared to 15 years ago, it's just way more open. Right?
Yeah, big time.
You have to be really, really good to stand out because there's so much out there. But like you said, just work 5 times harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, if you're good enough, you will stand out. As opposed to, listen, man, 50, 60 years ago in Hollywood, actors had to sign 5 movie deals with these studios. They couldn't do anything else, right?
No.
Like, compare the two systems. What we have now is not perfect by any means, but it's... Would you rather be in that system where
where the only color you had was Sammy Davis Jr.? There's definitely more than that. Absolutely. The nice thing with, like I said, where we've gotten is that the key here is content, and content has the game on content has completely changed with the emergence of VOD, like video on demand. Has absolutely Netflix, Amazon, YouTube now. What's the other one that just got in the
Facebook
game?
is doing
Facebook's
it too.
Apple's got their own.
Let's see,
They've already got TV shows in production.
Walmart actually is getting into it too, by the way.
Amazing.
I read this, and it was bound to happen. I knew it.
Oh, without a doubt. When all of these players are getting in the game and they're creating such vast content, and now there's room for such vast content, all of this bodes so well for everybody involved in the industry, as well as everyone involved in this thing called life that we're in, because all of a sudden the representation, to kind of take this full circle to the backstory, being able to look at a screen and to see someone as unique as you are in a way in a sense, gives so much more when it comes to being able to look at a screen and go, you know what, I do belong.
Yeah.
I do fit in. Even in people's uniqueness,
Right.
you do have a spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lesson that if we could have learned when we were younger, maybe we would have started on this journey much sooner. Who
Sure.
knows? Who
Sure.
knows really? Who knows? If you could look at that and say, hey, mom and dad, look, there's a possibility for me
Yeah.
to be up there, then how much of your struggles along the way of trying to convince them that you might actually have a career in this would you have avoided?
Right.
Per se, not to say that your parents are the end all do all, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is you do have an innate responsibility.
And I think it's
to kind of
also
respect them.
for me, a lot of this work was realizing that my voice is really important,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because a lot of us struggle with that. We struggle with you've had that self doubt.
Yeah, you mean literally or figuratively, like your literal voice, or is it that like your what you have to say to the
Figuratively,
world?
what I have to say to
is-
the world is actually really valuable and
Yeah,
important.
because they're both very valuable, to be honest. But figuratively speaking,
Yes, and because once you truly that becomes a part of your DNA, nothing can stop you. I really believe that. Because
agree.
then all these smaller rejections along the way are just bumps in the road.
yeah,
And then
purpose, right?
What's that?
Purpose.
Yeah, exactly. So, and seeing that's possible gives you that strength more because it makes you realize that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's kind of get back. So you're in Vancouver. So do you find the industries here different at all?
Big time.
Like-
I love Vancouver. Now, okay, before I jump into that, the pretense I'll set is this is my experience.
Sure, of
throughout
course.
This, right?
Of course.
Of course, this isn't going to be everyone's experience, and people see this industry from all sides.
Yeah.
But the way I saw it was I thought, hey, Toronto is seems to be hard to break into.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a lot of people that aren't seeing it the same way I see it, and in a way, you got to be delusional when you're doing this thing, and you got to, even though nobody else believes, literally delusion. You believe in something nobody else believes in. You got to look at it and go, I believe that I have a chance, even though nobody around you does. And somewhere in that, there was a voice that went, you know what, this isn't the right spot.
Yeah.
This isn't the right spot to have your voice heard, that voice we're talking about. This isn't it. And a little opportunity showed up for me to be able to move to Vancouver and simplify that process for me. I had a great acting teacher at the time. And I moved myself out to Vancouver about 5 years ago, 2013. Met up with an amazing agent who is still my agent to the day here, and we very quickly hit the ground running. And one of the first things I instantly noticed, East versus West. Toronto, and maybe New York too, I don't actually know because I haven't experienced that, but the East Coast seems to have a almost a business quality to it in the craft, in the world, from my experience, that the West doesn't, which makes going out as a new actor, going out and seeing some of these casting directors who are very personable out here, very polite, and let you have your time and let you understand and totally understand that not all actors are going to be amazing on their first go.
Yeah.
They have a tendency to see all of that and allow you to explore and grow and take your time with the process, which was something that to me was very helpful at the time. I got here about, like I said, 5 years ago, and instantly I was blown away at how much comfort I had in the rooms.
Yeah.
How much I could go in and people would, one, believe in me, but two, let me take my time with getting my footing right. You know what I mean? It's always hard at the beginning. You have no idea what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to behave. And that for me was very beneficial when I moved here. Was this concept that, you know what? It's an art. There is a craft to it, but it is an art. Go in, get yourself comfortable. Mm-hmm. People want you to succeed. And now it's funny because I look back and I go, hey, was this all happening in Toronto and I just was oblivious to it? There's a very good chance that might have been the case too. But I went in and the entire process of it being that much more personable for me was a game changer. Okay. From there on, it was nothing but growth from there. So very quickly, I came here for a trial period, which what would be 3 months, and I
Just never
I
went
think
back.
my mom called me back, being like, "Hey, you ever coming back?" And I'm like, "I don't think so, Mom. I think I'm gonna stay here." It grew on me very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I guess it didn't help that I made some of the best friends I've made in within the industry here.
Yeah.
Who remain very close personal friends to me. But it was an amazing little journey, and one of the biggest, if not best, steps I've taken in my personal journey was deciding, you know what, you don't have to be tied down. I understand that, like, you're
Especially when
tied down
you're
to
young,
family,
right?
you're tied down to where you grew up, you're tied down to all sorts of things at the time that you think you're so attached to. You're really not. You're really not.
I mean, this is what I say to everyone, right? It's if you have to do it now, because I think once if you do ever want kids, if you have kids, then it's a game changer, right? Of course, you have your parents as well and everything, but
Yeah.
but like if you have kids and a family, then it's a commitment. Then you can't just pick up and move,
Yeah.
right? So you have to just do it if you want, if it's in your mind. At least give it a shot, like you said. And if it doesn't work out, just go back.
Big
or
time,
whatever, right?
big time, yeah.
So what are some of the projects that you've been involved in the last few years here?
One of the ones I got to work on, or still working on, Good Doctor.
Oh, okay, cool.
Is out. It's
Freddie
doing-
Highmore.
Freddie Highmore.
Have you gotten
wonderful.
a chance to work with him?
I have. He's a wonderful dude.
Yeah.
Honestly, he's one of those in the middle of action and cut. You just don't talk to him because he goes to a corner and he
Sure.
sits down and.
Well, also
and
he's
does
playing a
his thing.
character where
He's
it's hard to switch on and off from
big
that. So
time. He's one of the I mean, of the people I've gotten to work with, which is what I have to go on. Honestly, an incredibly genuine dude, super nice, lovely soul, and the nice thing about him is when the show was starting out, he really cared about doing this right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He did the research, you mean.
It was one of those where, like, who am I? I'm there for a day on an episode
Right.
per episode. I have like a day per episode or
Right.
something.
what do you play? Who do you play?
Nurse Jag.
Oh,
he's
cool.
a wonderful guy. Yeah, really. He works in the ER. And
Brown nurse, that's groundbreaking.
Brown nurse.
Do you have a beard? Do you have stubble on it?
Absolutely,
Look at that.
absolutely. ABC is nice with that. No, they honestly that show's done a wonderful job with ethnic casting.
Yeah.
They have one of everybody in there,
Yeah.
and so it is. It's one of the things that makes that show absolutely amazing to not only work on but also see on TV.
Right.
But the entire group was so adamant on making sure that this story was told well. Again, which makes it so much fun to work on.
Yeah.
Not to mention that they're all obviously wonderful people. But other than that, there's over the last bit, there's the Hallmark one, which was pretty groundbreaking, and then did a little stint on Supernatural and The Flash.
Nice.
But yeah, we're coming ways, man. We're coming ways, which is it's nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to know if I could have gone back and told my younger self that it's gonna be okay. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? As opposed to spending so many years trying to fight the norm, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. If you could go back, I'm sure you would say the same.
Mm-hmm.
10 years from now, this industry is going to be completely different. We're going to have stories about so many different demographics. And
I mean,
cultures.
personally, what I would tell myself is I think you have to change yourself and not worry about changing the world. You have to work on yourself, and then you just become this unstoppable force, and then
Yeah.
the world changes along with you. That's what I believe.
Big time.
What I would tell myself is, first of all, don't try to get stuff perfect. I think a lot of times we just don't do anything because we want to get it perfect right away. You know, like, oh, I want to start a podcast. Just start it. Start with, know what you're doing, but it's not going to be perfect right away.
Big
You're going
time.
to iterate. You're going to evolve, right? And that's actually more interesting to watch. Look at Joe Rogan's first podcast like 9 years ago. It's not what it is today.
Not at all.
And that's fine. That voice of self-criticality
Yeah.
stops you from doing anything.
Yeah.
You're just judging yourself before you even take first step.
Big
That's what I
time.
tell myself. Just go out there, get rid of your ego, just do, evolve,
Big time,
iterate,
big
and
time.
get better.
One of the analogies I've always lived my life by actually is, and I picked this up somewhere, I can't remember where, but life essentially is a staircase, right? And you're looking at the staircase. You have no idea all you know is that it's a staircase. Now what you also are in the middle of is that all the lights are out. It's pitch black.
Yeah.
You can't see.
Yeah.
You have no idea, right? You don't know where the top of the staircase is. You kind of figure you're at the bottom if you're standing somewhere.
Right.
Your own personal bottom. But all you know is this hypothetical idea that this figurative staircase is a staircase.
Mm-hmm.
By definition, there's a step ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what step comes after that. You
Right.
can't see it. It's dark. There's a step ahead of you. There's one after that, there's one after that, and there's one after that. Eventually, till you reach the top. Or you don't. Maybe it's a never-ending staircase. Who knows?
Right.
But, by definition, there is only one thing in this pitch black room that you're in that you have to go on. Reach your foot out. You'll feel a step.
Yeah.
Take it. Reach your foot out again. Feel the next step.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah.
If you even begin to try to look 3 feet ahead of you, 3 steps ahead of you, anywhere that's not directly immediately in front of you, it's pitch black, brother. You're going to fall down. You're going to fall down. You're going to get hurt. You're going to start right back at the bottom.
Yeah.
Reach out. Take the step that's there. Once you do, you'll feel the next step in front of you.
Yeah.
It's a staircase, and it's pitch black. And if you just do that, you take one step at a time. Eventually,
Yeah.
you'll reach somewhere. You can't not.
That's a good
You can't
analogy.
not.
And I think the other point to note there is the staircase might diverge. You
It
might
might.
want to go in
You
a
have no
different path,
idea
and
what the
that's
staircase
totally
looks like.
fine. It's just do, and then you will just know what to do next
time.
based
We all-
on what happens.
We all have our own personal staircases.
Right.
Shapes, no idea. How wide the steps are, no idea. How long the step, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. You won't know. Nobody will know.
Right.
The only thing you have to go on, it might go left, it might go right, it might divert. Who knows?
Right.
But you'll never know unless you
Take those
look
steps.
immediately in front of you
Yeah.
and just take the step that's there. That's it.
Yep. Yep.
That's it. It's honestly, life's that easy.
I mean, I think it is, but it's a fear of failure, basically.
Big time.
And the fear of failure comes from you want to be accepted, and you think if you fail, you will be rejected.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, where a lot of it comes from.
Fear of failure is definitely, you always like to spin it on its head and go fear of success, right? Is another way to look at
Yeah.
it, because success means you got to do something. Fear of failure is definitely there, and it's fear of rejection, I think.
Yeah.
In many different ways of the word. But failure, in all sense of the concept, is actually pretty easy. Just don't do anything.
Right.
Failure is actually super, super easy. What's hard is living up to success and
Right.
the success that you've defined in your own head. So yeah, definitely fear of failure, but also the idea that if success does roll around, then you actually got to be something. You got to take a step out into the world, and you got to own something.
Right.
So a combination of that is all spectrumed within that thought process. That if you take that step, now you're a bigger person, you're a taller person. You gotta live up to what that step entails you to do,
Right.
and it's hard. It's
course.
hard to look at that and go, okay, I'm just a kid in, I don't know, Switzerland, and there's these steps ahead of me, and if I go up those steps, then I'm gonna have to be someone and stand for something.
Yep.
So it's a challenge,
Yeah.
it's a battle, but by all means, that's life.
I
right?
think it's part of it is just 90% of the battle is just with yourself.
Mhm.
Because once you develop
Agreed.
that self-love, the self-love also comes with working on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just wake up and be like, I love myself.
Makes
just
sense.
say that to yourself every day without doing anything. You're not going to automatically
It's
love
not
yourself.
gonna work.
You will respect yourself when you worked on yourself and you realize your own value. You will not realize your own value unless you've worked on yourself.
Big time.
Otherwise, it's just lip service to it, right?
Big time.
And from that, you develop belief in your voice, which leads to all that, right?
Of course.
So-
action's a big component of all this. It's very easy to sit and say you're going to do something, but to actually do something,
Right.
that's the tough part.
So one question I love to ask all my guests:
Please.
what are some high performance habits you've picked up from other professionals in this industry?
Quite a few.
High performance or good habits in general?
Yeah. There's two. Well, there's one habit which I can't live without anymore, which is it's nothing to do with the craft. It's more just to do with life, which
Sure.
is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, is how most people like to put it. But to narrow that down in a day-to-day a situation, before you go to bed, you got to write down 5 things you're going to do the next day.
Yeah, that's
You're either
important.
going to do them or you're not going to do them, but you got to write down
Yeah.
5 things you're going to do the next day. You just do. the amount of times it is so easy to waste a day. It is so easy to waste a day. And when you waste one, then you waste 10. When you waste 10, you waste 100. And then before you know it,
year's gone.
Year's gone. So I literally can't go to bed without doing this. 5 things I'm going to do the next day. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to get through all of them.
Yeah.
But it's a plan.
Right.
If you don't plan, you're only screwing yourself. Where I picked up that habit, I don't remember. But that was a habit that I cannot live without. A lot of the other habits that I do live with, actually, funny enough, do come from friends and people that I hold very near and dear and that are quite successful for themselves in some sense of the word. And a lot of those involve not being so hard on yourself.
Right.
It involves not you got to take it easy from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You got to be able to look at yourself and go, I belong here and I can't be put into stress. Now, whether that means meditating for some, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. Yoga one doesn't work so well for me. Athletic sports, gym,
Right.
Things that help you get out of yourself for a bit have become very, very important habits to me in my life because, it's very easy if you succumb to it. But if you realize what works for you and what allows you to kind of step outside of your head, keep those habits close because it's very easy to get lost in there. And if you can find a moment to like I said, for some it's meditation, for some it's going to the gym, for some it's boxing, for some it's whatever it may be. Find what yours is and stick to it because that it's truly an invaluable habit.
It is true. I struggle with it still. I have a very rigorous pre-audition ritual, but my post-audition ritual is bad.
Yeah.
Like they say, right? The best audition is always the one that you do in the car after.
Big time. Big time. That's the best take. Listen, just have your iPhone rolling in the car, and then you'll be fine.
And then you call the agent. Hey, can you just send this one instead?
Send that over.
No, but it's so important. Is what I've realized is right away have something planned to do right away. Yeah. And whatever that is for you, right? Physical activity, whatever you need to do.
Big time. Pre-audition, post-audition are always so much fun because I used to be quite heavy on my pre and post rituals. I used to get very, I was kind of like, I gotta go like do something after, or I gotta do something before and whatnot. The problem I had is that I realized all I was doing was diverting from what was actually important in the moment, which was I was so focused on all these things.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do here, what I'm going to do there, that I kind of, at most times, honestly, forgot about what's important, which is the voice that we were talking about, but for the character.
Right.
And if you could just look at that.
Yeah.
And spend your, pre-audition ritual narrowing down that and trying to figure out why are you here in this whatever in the scene in this moment, what is it that you're trying to say, and if you know that and you're prepared on your work, you're gonna be fine. Take it easy on yourself. Don't overthink, right? Because I have one of those brains that works at a mile a minute. Don't overthink. You're in there to do a job. Go do the job. Once you're done the job, you'll be done the job. Yeah, that's it. You go on, you live your life, and you do things that make you happy. That's my pre and post ritual if I ever have one.
That's great.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Do the work and forget it, and then move on. Life moves on. Be
diligent and be persistent, and find a way to be happy.
Great. Thanks so much for being on the podcast with me, Adil.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right.
Pleasure.